very much, Jakob. And thank you to the whole Teleindustrien team for inviting me to share the stage with you today. And thank you to Minister Støy for those very incisive words. And I know our panelists will want to respond to some of your comments today. And thank you to everyone in the room for being here with us. My name is Elsa Sapenda. I'm Head of Public Policy for Europe at the GSMA. And I'm delighted to be moderating our first panel, which is Towards a True Telecoms Single Market, European Perspectives and Danish Realities. With me are 6 distinguished panelists, representing both the regulatory view and the industry view. And so to introduce them in no particular order, Renate Nicolai, Deputy Director General at DG Connect of the European Commission, Morten Christiansen, Regional CEO of 3 Scandinavia and 3 Austria, Gert Winter Jørgensen, Group CEO of Norlis, Christian Trane, CEO of Nuday, Michel Jumeau, CEO of TDC Net, and last but not least, Lars Thomsen, CEO of Telenor Denmark. And with such an esteemed panel and only 45 minutes allotted to this important topic, we'll all have to be disciplined with time, and I've even brought a digital watch today to help me with this. So without further ado, I'd like to begin by asking our CEOs for your reflections on Minister Støy's keynote speech. What are your headline reactions, a 2-minute segment if you could, to the upcoming EU Presidency priorities? And what are the key priorities for your companies and for the mobile telecommunications sector in terms of regulatory environment? Morten, perhaps you'd like to begin.
Yeah, happy to, and thanks for inviting me to be here in this esteemed panel at this day, right ahead of the Danish presidency. It's a big honor. By starting to reflect a little bit on the minister's speech, I can start by saying what I agree with, and then I can talk a little bit about what I don't agree with. I completely agree with the fact that we need to protect our children and teenagers. I think we are being led by the big American tech companies, Chinese tech companies, and I think that there is a regulatory need to stop that. It kind of equates to me like allowing cigarettes and booze in the kindergartens. To be very blunt, so I think we need absolutely to do something about that. I also much agree about the reduction of rules and red tape and administration and regulations widely. That would help us. Of course, it's however not going to solve our major problem. Our major problem is that the value of telecommunications companies is dropping. Standalone values, if you look at analyst reports, are going down, down, down. The markets we are in are not growing, maybe slightly because we sell more than 1 subscription per user, but eventually there haven't come new people into these markets for 15 years at least. So to regain the competitiveness that we should have, and we are talking about 102 networks, 152 operators across Europe versus what we saw Vivek present, a completely different structure. I think we need to rethink this business. I think we need to rethink, what we thought when we came into the business. This is a much changing environment. It's also very, very grim in many ways because we do need to focus on how we secure our society going forwards. So I see 3 main pillars in this. There is energy. Without energy, we can't do much. Without communication, we also can't do much. For instance, we cannot do transactions. If we can't do transactions, everything stops. So we need to secure resilience, safety in the infrastructure. And to do that, I firmly believe that we have to have fewer, bigger, and stronger, and therefore more resilient and safe infrastructures across Europe. That is one thing, and I'll stop now.
Please, Gert, if you are. Oh, click well, if you prefer. Yes, thank you.
Me or?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. First of all, thank you to GSMA and the Teleindustry for making this conference. It's very important, and thanks for the ministers to be here and all of you. And as for the minister's speech, I fully support focusing on getting Europe back on track, the increased investments needed in the digital infrastructure, also making this a safe place for the children and the youth. I fully support that part as well. I also hope I heard that you said that the big techs should take their responsibility as well for their products at the networks as well. As Denmark take over the responsibility of the EU representative here very, very soon, I also hope that, as you mentioned, the Draghi report really shows that the competitiveness is lacking in Europe and that digital investments are needed as one of the levers of getting Europe back on track. And we need that very, very soon. And coming back to make that happen, I'm pretty sure that the regulation should reflect that. Allow for market operators to have the right scale. We also saw that in the introduction, that scale is an issue, especially in Denmark, if we should make the needed investments. So I really hope that would be a key priority. Yeah.
Thank you, Gert. Christian.
First of all, a big thank you. I think we can easily agree a lot of things. We can agree that networks are incredibly important for all of us and for competitiveness. We can agree that a strong Europe is particularly important. We can agree that access and prices, end user prices, are important and has contributed, but I don't think anyone around Europe is not getting access to mobile technology at the price points we're seeing now. And I have to agree with Vivek that scale does matter. And you also, Vivek, pointed out a couple of things that I would like to take out, which is innovation is much more than just rolling out a network. It's getting 5G standalone out there, it's getting slicing out there, it's opening up to APIs that allow us to bring new services to customers. It's investments in security that take a back seat because we don't have to focus on that. We have to focus on the end user prices. So there's so many things that we really need to look at. And I think it's important when we think about the situation we're in right now that it's unprecedented. What we are seeing right now, we can't look in the rearview mirror to find the answer. The pace is at such a scale that we have not seen it before, right? AI is moving so fast, and the scale of the players that are investing in AI, we have to step into, right? And in Europe and in the Nordics, we have a strong and proud history of being part of developing networks. I think we should make sure that we foster innovation. We allow for investments, and market cap of minus 40% is worrying when you want companies to invest. So I think that's probably some of the things I wanted to mention, and then I'm sure we're going to have a lively debate.
Thank you, Christian. Michelle.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for organizing the event. Of course, I welcome, what has been discussed before on the need for potentially simplifying the regulatory framework and also building more security, more resilient telco. I think the question for all of us is how radical we want to be to meet the challenges of this new decade, And I'm going to quote the Bible, of course, the Draghi report, like everybody else. And I'm going to pick up the stuff that I am really interested in. But in the Draghi report, there is two things that are being mentioned. One is about simplifying the regulation, potentially moving to general competition law. It's actually written. And there is also, of course, a need to promote scale and to encourage, to foster network consolidation. So I think that's the two key words, at least for me today, deregulation and network consolidation. Of course, we have to, and I think the time is now. The time is now because we are changing of era. The decade ahead of us is very, very different from the last 20 years. Now, in the last 20 years, there was revenue growth, growth of revenue were there. The interest rate were low. The geopolitical tension were manageable. Look at this new decade. The geopolitical tensions are super high. They are rocket high. We don't even know who are the allies of Europe. There is no revenue growth anymore. Interest rates are much higher. So this is time to act now. We will need to invest much more in security to secure our infrastructure. We will need to invest more to become independent. Technology independence has a cost. There is a price to pay to be independent from the rest of the world. We need to keep on investing as well to fund our green transition. And of course, we need to build the future-proof digital infrastructure of the country. So all of that requires investment. The time has come now to promote, to design a new regulation policies to promote scale and to unleash investment.
Thank you, Michel. And Lars.
Yeah, well, again, as everyone else, thank you for being invited and being the last one to speak, trying to say something that hasn't been said by my smart CEO colleagues. I do want to give a shout out to the minister, because you have taken the position as sort of the voice of the kids, our future generations. Their life are digital. Their lives will be formed digitally. You should stand firm on that. I think you have the whole industry behind you. We do various initiatives. We want to do even more. So let's not even discuss how much, but of course, as I think Gert said, the platform, those who provide the content, we should probably have a harder stand on them, maybe also together. I think your initial question was also what is focusing on your companies, and I think it's probably best for me to talk about my company to try to bring a new perspective. You said in your answer to Jakob regarding this that each member country implement various legislation at different pace, at different level, and in Denmark we have a proud tradition of implementing fast and over-implementing, meaning it's really hard to navigate in Denmark. In Telenor, we of course are interested in security clearance across the Nordics, so we can move employees around, we can build resilience. I think that is almost an open road to do something that is actually fairly easy to align on, to ensure companies, especially in the Nordic region, then we can move on to the rest of Europe. So we can ensure we build resilience in what we are doing already. I think that's sort of, an open avenue. Of course, your stance on Denmark was maybe a little bit tougher on consolidation than I would have liked. I think we should have a European perspective, but you also said you're willing to listen and discuss. And I think I know there are analysis done that's showing that actually consolidation across border actually gives bigger investments than before. So maybe we can exchange numbers and facts at some point, but at least you're glad you didn't shut the door completely, because it is, as you can hear, it's a bigger discussion. But I think that was what I could add that hasn't been said before.
Thank you very much, Lars. I'm sure we'll dig into more of these insights later, but I'd like to change the tune a little now and move to Renata to give you the floor for a different purpose. As I'm sure everyone in this room knows, the European Commission is currently developing the upcoming Digital Networks Act, which aims to replace a regulatory framework that has shaped the telecoms industry for over 2 decades. Could you please share a little more about the vision behind this new act and what the industry should realistically expect from it? Is a true telecom single market finally within reach for Europe?
I think our approach on the Digital Networks Act is to bring back, indeed, a vision for a digital single market. Because even though the telecom liberalization that dates back 25 years ago has been a true success story, with opening up for competition, reducing prices for consumers, all these are important assets. I think there's one important leftover that hasn't achieved, and that is we don't have a single telecom market. We have rather a compartmentalized, set of 27 different national markets. And with all the kind of, assessment that has gone into the transition from the last commission into this commission, the reports were all mentioned, it's clear that, the digital infrastructure is a key ingredient for the future competitiveness. So in that context, it's very clear what is on our plate when we are working on the Digital Networks Act, for which we have just opened a call for evidence. So we are gathering, again, input for that important work. I think there are a couple of points. First, I think we need, in year 2025, we need to look at connectivity in a holistic way. we need to kind of look at the broader kind of context of, if we really want to close digital gaps and we want the kind of the seamless connectivity that we want for our AI application everywhere, regardless of geology, wherever you are, whether you're on an island or in an urban kind of, center, we need to look at it from the terrestrial, the submarine, and the kind of satellite perspective. So that's a totally different vision for the Digital Networks Act compared to the Electronic Communication Code that we are looking at. Second, we have a totally different context on security and resilience. We are kind of dealing with sabotage, at least allegations when it comes to cables. We're seeing cuts on electricity grids. That could also happen on connectivity. So we really have to take very seriously what we also heard in the ministerial report on the resilience work, and we need to build that in our future Digital Networks Act. Third, we need to simplify the rules. The rules were made in a totally different context. They were made in a context where we had monopolistic structures and where you wanted to cut that down. In the meantime, we have seen a lot of, I would say, gold plating by member states on certain aspects of the electronic communication codes that we will hopefully very clearly show when we're doing the evaluation of the code next to the presentation of the Digital Networks Act. And we really want to cut that and have a much simpler way. This goes for issues such as authorization, but this also goes, far beyond that. So there's ample possibility to really simplify the rules, which would make it much easier for the operators to deal with it. Fourth, we really need to deal with the single market perspective. We need to take a critical look at areas such as spectrum, where, even ideas that were intended in the current code to facilitate more of a single market perspective, peer reviewing and whatever, haven't really delivered. So we really need, to bring this in a more joined up way together when it comes to the criteria for spectrum, when it comes to the duration of spectrum. All that, I think, would give a different vision also for telecom operators, that there's something in it for them in the single market, and also create a totally different investment climate. And the last point I want to make is the governance structure, because we have also created 25 years ago a governance structure that was very much determined by a context where was a heavily regulated market, where we should look at whether that heavily regulated market is still in need of such a heavy regulation, or whether we couldn't find more modern ways of dealing with market failures, which we will always need to address, because you can never be sure that competition stays forever, and we need to have safeguards for that. But for that, we need a governance structure that works a little bit more joined up, instead of having 27 different national contexts that only look at their national perspectives. All that also in a context where we are, and it was mentioned also, by the speakers already, where we are seeing huge technological disruptive, developments, and where we will need to move the sector into more network slicing, more edge computing, more specialized services if we want to remain our competitiveness. So this is the context in which we are designing the Digital Networks Act. So this is not just a little revision of the electronic communication codes. This is something totally new. This is an answer and a vision for a connectivity sector in 2025.
Thank you so much, Renata. We really appreciate your clarity and your frankness, and indeed your vision for the sector. Turning back to our CEOs for another quick fire round of reactions. What are your thoughts on Renata's outline of the upcoming DNA proposal? What's on your wish list for the DNA, and how do you think, what are your expectations for whether that can be achieved in reality? Do the wish list and the realistic outcomes align? Gert, perhaps we could begin with you this time.
Yeah,
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we have discussed that we know that the Commission is working hard to cut red tape and deregulate, but I also believe that if the aim is really to solve the European 200 billion underinvestment in the digital infrastructure, I guess we should be more ambitious by doing so. I remain optimistic that there's a political will to go for it, but But yeah, this underinvestment, that's really something that bothers me, and I guess bothers all of us, and also coming to Denmark later on. And I still believe that we should look at Europe as a whole. I know that some countries are far ahead of others, but I guess it will benefit all of us to have a strong Europe, and that will have a strong European economy will benefit all of us, also in Denmark, where I guess in many ways we are far ahead in digitalization, but we should support the full Europe here. A recent report by Copenhagen Economics actually showed that the telco sector contributed around 6 billion to the society and the economy here in Denmark alone. And this also gets really showing that investing in the telco industry really brings value to the whole European Union as well. So if I should cut it very clear, my wish list for the coming Digital Network Act is a fundamental change. Write it in a way so it truly incentivize and enable private investments. Yeah.
Thank you, Gert.
I can take it on. I mean, I'm particularly happy to hear that this is not sort of a small adjustment. This is a fundamental rethink. I think that is important, and I think it's important to just recognize our starting point that we are a very fragmented industry. Many different countries, different setup, different regulation, different networks within a country, right? And as a service provider on multiple networks, also different networks to integrate to. So it's a quite fragmented starting point. So I think that's important. Then I think it's important to lean into, investment. How do you make sure that we can actually pay off investment? Because unless you can, you don't get the level of investments that we need. And then I note the last point you made. You talked about sort of some of the things that Vivek talked about as well, the slicing, the APIs, and these things. And I think it's important to think about it in the context of AI. If you think about the opportunity that we have, and as an industry, I think we probably haven't lived up to, and Vivek, I'm looking at you and thinking about the GSMA and the work on ID management. I think that as an industry, we can really be part of bringing AI out in a secure way, because we can do authentication and link back to IDs. We can verify location. We can verify device. So all these things combined allow us to be a key ingredient of a safe AI. And I think that's something that we can really step up to and will mean something for the entire Europe. So I think it's nailing some of these aspects, I think will be very important. And then again, allow maybe fostering specific innovation, lean in for that, and allow a return on capital.
Thank you, Christian. Lars.
Yeah, well, I just want to acknowledge, I actually think it is big ambitions you laid out. I think you need a bit of an onboarding with the Danish leadership, because there's clearly, I think your ambitions are higher than maybe what the leadership, at least how we understood it from Caroline. So there's a discussion to be had there. I also be mindful of what we said before, and also what Caroline said, that each member state cannot do, God knows how many different implementations, right? We need to really ensure that that we do it in a unified way. I think you should set an objective for the investment level, and then harmonize rules. Use the rules. You can say simplification to finance some of it. I think you should harmonizing within EU in terms of e-privacy, which is not necessarily what we need at this stage. It's over 20 years old, right? You can do it within security clearance, as I just mentioned. You could do it within spectrum frequency, how long you actually have these frequencies for, because that also part of our business, part of how we calculate ROI. And then sort of on a very practical, let me just bring it really down to earth here. In Denmark, a new customer, we can make a contract for 6 months if they buy the iPhone or Samsung, whatever they buy. In Sweden, it's 24 months. In Norway, which is our EUS, but I don't know what it is, 1 year. I think we have the highest cost in Europe. We have the lowest prices. We pay the vendors the same for our handset. We have the same cost of producing a gigabyte to our customers. So why don't we also harmonize that? The customer satisfaction, at least in Sweden, Finland, and Norway, those numbers I have insight to, is better than Denmark. So why don't we give the operators? That is, of course, between the competition authorities and the minister. But I think we need to look at it a little bit broader. How do we conduct business in Europe? How do we do the societal contract between consumers, the telco industry, and EU? I think that's really an opportunity there, which is very specific, and I think will actually have a huge impact for us in Denmark.
Thank you, Lars. Michel.
Yes, so I think I heard that we might be considering some disruptive move, some disruptive changes on the regulatory framework. I like that very much, and I think the regulatory framework for the telecommunication industry is now outdated. You know, it's not fit for purpose anymore, and it's quite understandable because it was actually designed 30 years ago in the 90s. And it was designed on purpose to break down monopoly and to lower consumer price. And actually, job done, well done. It worked extremely well. When you look at the market share of the national incumbent, the historical national incumbent, in most of Europe, they are lower than 40%. Sometimes they are 35%, And the consumer price, okay, you can always argue that it's not low enough, but if you compare with the rest of the Western civilization world, like the US, like Japan, Korea, it's relatively low. So this is the right time to completely reset our regulation policies, And I would advocate, I will give it a try. I would advocate actually, when it comes to broadband, to move to a general competition law. It's very simple. Instead of being stuck right now in an ex-ante regulation model that is very, very complex and mobilizing many, many resources, And if you look very close to where we are in Norway, I'm observing that in Norway, the Danish competition authority decided to actually deregulate the broadband market and to switch to general competition law. That's a very interesting move for me. And that's probably an example that we should follow.
Thank you, Michel. Morten.
Okay. I was particularly intrigued by what you actually talked about, spectrum harmonization. 2/3 of my responsibility is Scandinavia, that is Denmark and Sweden. We actually built a common technology division to be shared between the Swedish OpCo and the Danish OpCo. And that works beautifully when it comes to IT, but when it comes to network, we're nowhere. I mean, the times of the spectrum auctions are far apart. We both use Ericsson as a vendor. We cannot buy the same equipment because we do not get allotted the same types of spectrum and the same placements in the bands. So that's off as a synergy. Having said that, that's just really depicts a little bit what you said. I think you have completely sorted out your side of the equation. That's good. That's in order. I agree with most of what you said. The other side of the equation, however, is what would get us to where we could actually act and behave as a single market is actually simple. I mean, Europe is a bunch of boxes with different nationalities and as we heard in the beginning, special treats and cultures and so forth. What we need is a more liberal approach to consolidation so that the players per market gets fewer and stronger. And from that point on, you're going to see more cross-border consolidation because the money in I shouldn't say money, I should say cost synergies, because that really is what it is about. Is vast in market. They're very, very scarce cross-border. It is when you can have your number of stores, half your network costs, half everything you do. That is when you release cost synergies. That doesn't necessarily flow onto higher consumer prices. I mean, I think the UK merger that my owners have completed with Vodafone in the UK is a class example because that's behavioral remedies. It's a deal between the companies and the country and the state. UK needs better infrastructure. Okay, we will will invest a very large amount into improving the infrastructure in the UK, the mobile infrastructure. And so that's one side of it. And then I believe they agreed that to freeze prices for 3 years. So everybody gets what they want. And that's not impossible market by market either. I don't know why it has to be so square. So I think you've sorted it out. You need to get your colleagues at DG Com to see it the same way, because then I think we can go somewhere.
Thank you, Morten. Interesting to hear you all identify such a time of opportunity, but a range of perspectives on the best way forward. Time is ticking, though. I would like to move on and ask you again, our CEOs here, more specific questions on the broader regulatory environment surrounding the telecommunications sector, both in Denmark and the EU. As the Minister indicated earlier, opinions obviously can differ on consolidation in telco markets, but I know that that's something that is close to the hearts of many of you on the stage, and that some of you at least would like to put forward some alternative views. And I think, Michelle, if we could start with you. If we assume that greater scale enables increased investment capacity, should Denmark reconsider its traditionally cautious stance on in-market consolidation, not only to enhance competitiveness, but also to create more room for long-term strategic investment?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. We talked a lot about network consolidation. Yes, you need, if you want to foster investment power, you need scale. It's all about scale. The telecommunication industry is about scale. So we need to be bigger. We need to build national champion. So we need to find a way to promote in-market consolidation, at least in-market network consolidation. Just on the fiber, and there are more than 20 infrastructure providers for a country of 6 million inhabitants. Does it make sense? And if you look at the rest of the world, we are super tiny. I mean, Vivek mentioned that. Look at the US. It's 250 million inhabitants, 3, maybe 4 big telco, 3 to 4. Look at look at China. 1.5 billion inhabitants, 3 telco, big telco. Look at Europe, 450 million inhabitants, more than 100 telco, 130 operators, as you rightly pointed out. We are super tiny. Look at the market cap of the biggest player in Europe. Look at Vodafone. Look at Telefonica. Look at Orange. 20 to 30 billion market cap, something like that, max. Look at Verizon. Look at AT&T. I mean, you get to 200 billion. They are 10 times bigger than we are. So how can you compete on the global scale when you are so tiny and we need to invest massively in the coming years? So again, yes, we will need to have much more flexibility, at least to envision in-market consolidation, network-wise, and maybe more, like what's happening in the UK. No, it's also happened in Spain, because we need to have this national champion to invest in security, to invest in technology independence, and to build a future-proof digital infrastructure.
Thank you, Michelle. Lars, on a similar theme, the industry has, as we know, been calling for more opportunities to grow scale. And now we see some signals from Brussels that EU merger policy could perhaps be revisited. In your view, how should the EU, and indeed Denmark, evolve its approach to in-country consolidation, and why?
First of all, I think it's not only a matter of volume or scale. This is actually about digital independence for Europe. That, I think, is really, we need to answer that question. How can we solve that, you can say, problem or challenge for Europe? And then say, then the consolidation of the scale is one way of solving it. I think we have a paradox, right? We want security, innovation, investment, low consumer prices, but we don't really want to give the operators the frameworks that is required to deliver on or to enable that. We are built, I think Christian said it, we are a 30-year-old industry or more. We are built on legacy, we are built on complexity, we are built on a world that no longer exists, and we have so strong national considerations, where I think we need to start with the EU view, and then really the national or the countries as a tag along, right? We think, of course, I also had hoped for that the minister actually would have come with a breaking news, and Denmark would change their stand, because yes, her examples were good, but they were a thing of the past. That was what worked 5, 10, it's many years ago since we took the 5G decision. I am not sure any of us here will support 6G if it cannot see, you know, and this is not an official statement as such, it's more as an example, right? But really, how long is the frequency? Well, you know, when and the 6G is not fully defined yet, but we need to have sort of, you know, being able to do proper business cases with properly return on the invested invested capital. So therefore, we have been good in Denmark. She actually praised us, right, Carolina, and saying we have been early on with 5G. We all know why. We have very, very good coverage here. We have broadband all over the country, but it comes at a price. And that price, if you also want that for the next 10 or 20 years, we need to enable that with the operator. So I really hope Denmark, I hope Denmark will use this presidency to reduce its resistance against in-market consolidation, and would use the EU sort of role to push the boundaries. That wasn't what I heard, but we can hope, and we can all push for that and try it out and really test it out and really ensure that we build for the long term, right?
Indeed. Thank you, Lars. Morten, a slight spin on a similar theme for you. Do you think we need to think differently about consolidation at the infrastructure level compared to the retail market when considering what's best serving the broader public interest? And what are the benefits of stronger collaboration between operators, be that infrastructure or wider, not just for the companies involved, but for the state and for consumers?
Well, I hope I won't sound like a broken record, because I have touched upon it earlier, and so has my fellow telco CEOs. But just maybe starting with Vivek's very interesting stats or numbers. The average customer base size was 6.6 to 7 million customers in Europe, which is extremely small compared to the regions we compare ourselves with. I mean, we have TDC New Day combined. They would make out half of that. My Danish operation is 1.7 million customers. It's almost by textbook impossible to survive with that number of customers. So yes, I do think we need to rethink. I said it also in the beginning, and it's been said now by Lars also. We have to think differently from now on, and for the next decade, or maybe even more, to secure what we want to achieve country by country, but certainly in Europe. We cannot have the same mindset. It's very admirable to focus so much on end consumer prices, but it cannot be everything. And I'm not threatening to throw them up a lot, because I don't even think that is the point. Because consolidation would bring about huge cost synergies that would give us the space to invest and expect a decent return if we were more parties combined in doing it. So even in under a frame, I say let's keep the prices steady for a number of years. You know, that would still be super attractive for us as companies, as CEOs. So we need to completely rethink it. We do need to invest more because of the threats that we are facing. We cannot just we build now for commercial purposes predominantly, and yes, we do invest, because if we don't invest, we're dead. It's a license to operate. If I would say, well, I can't see the business case in 5G, so I won't build it. I have to discuss a lot with my owners to get the funding to do this. And they say, well, is it really necessary? Can't you just do a little bit in the cities? I say, no, because the other guys are going to go for it. And if I don't, I'm dead. So we have to think differently. And again, back to what I said before, if we want bigger companies driving European tariff plans that you can use in most of the union, you have to have fewer players that are bigger and stronger. Simple as that. So we need to rethink this. Put it on zero and start again.
Thank you, Morten. Moving to a rather different topic for you, Geert, though there were some threads, I think, that Morten was referring to there. We see, of course, rising threats from cyber attacks, climate events, surging data demand. How should the telecommunications sector and governments rethink infrastructure investment to build more resilient and reliable networks?
First of all, I think that it's increasingly clear that the current EU regulation framework for the telco industry has been conceived in a very different time, looking at the threats, as you mentioned, what we're facing here today. I guess all of us has been worked hard to make resilient networks, but it's also no longer a question if a breach will happen. It's only a question when it will happen. And then also how we are actually going to deal with it and get back in operation as soon as possible. Therefore, I also hope that the government, together with, of course, our people here in the industry, would play a vital role across industries to make a vulnerability analysis to see where we are really having the risk. I guess we can learn a lot from the outage we had in the Southern Europe a month or so plus a month ago to see how vulnerable we are between sectors. And today we are not working like this. We are not having those cross-sectoral vulnerability analysis, and we really need to have those to learn from it. And then, of course, getting back to also the regulation, we should have a regulation that also enable us to make the needed investment of having a resilient network. So that's my wish, that we also will very much look into that, because society, people, businesses, we are all so dependent today on the telco industry, much more than it was the time where we had the regulation made first. So please.
Thank you, Geert. And perhaps, Christian, you can round us out with some thoughts on what will the consequences be if we fail in this? What if we fail to stimulate more investments into connectivity infrastructure?
Yeah, but then we fail to establish the platform that not just our industry but all the industries in Europe need to benefit from. Right? It's the right investment. It's the low latency. I mean, it's like yes, it's easy to talk about coverage and price. It's low latency, it's access to APIs, it's those type of services that build a new ecosystem of companies developing advanced services that can then scale and grow. It's creating that foundation. So it's for me it's a unique opportunity now with the Danish EU Presidency and the reform of the regulation across Europe, that we really step up to that moment. And take it seriously on behalf of, this is now Karolina's left, but it's not just families, it's the companies, it's security, right? It's making sure that we have the capacity to invest in the right security and maybe even finding ways of sharing different ways of threat detection and analysis across countries so that we can help each other become as secure as we can across Europe.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you all. Very thought-provoking, but time is pressing. And I'd just like to turn back to Renata now for a few minutes on a different but equally important topic, regulatory simplification in another sense. Obviously, that has been flagged as a top priority for the new Commission. Can you tell us more about the upcoming Digital Omnibus initiative, please? What are its key objectives and how might it reshape the current regulatory landscape in telecoms and digital?
We will, in this mandate, stress test our entire digital acquis. So this will be a work, over, the mandate, as every commissioner, every executive vice president have to do with their policy areas. But since there are kind of, burning requests, we decided that we will do a digital omnibus already this autumn in November. And that will mainly focus on 3 areas: the data acquis, the cyber acquis, and AI. So on the data acquis, it's high time, because nothing of what has been discussed will be possible if we don't kind of create also the potential of more data sharing and access to data. Because without access to data, we will not have the AI continent, we will not have all the kind of wonderful new business cases that we are, I think, having in mind here. We have in the area of non-personal data different kind of legislative pieces that need to be put in order. There is a free flow of data regulation that is outdated, that we don't need anymore. There's a Data Governance Act and a Data Act that need to be brought in kind of, context. And then there's the GDPR. So we have to kind of take a critical look at that and really make a big simplification exercise out of that. Cyber has been mentioned as an important kind of area that we need to work on. A lot has been done in the last mandate, in the last couple of years, to create much more of a common approach on prevention, on response, on detection. All that was important, but we did one act after the other. And these acts are not all, coherent. So there is a need, and this is also a request that is coming from business. We need some more coherence in terms of, for instance, the incident reporting. There needs to be one channel instead of having, various channels. So a lot can be done to really simplify the world for, business operators in the single market to kind of deal with their obligations under the cyber acquis. And then there's the AI Act. The AI Act, is a daring example of regulatory kind of, pioneering work in the EU. Guardrails that will serve us well. It has already entered into force with the prohibition lists that has entered into force. But of course, there are also, issues that need to be developed, like standards. So we will have to look at whether, there is coherence in the structure that we built in the long last night of the trilogues. And so I think that's another kind of area of work. And so that will make quite a substantive digital omnibus package. We will also look at our reporting requirements in our overall acquis. There aren't so many, but we will also take a critical look at that. And also at the various implementing and delegated acts, because that's another kind of, area where we need to build coherence. So I think this will be a first important, aspect to kind of be delivered this year, but it's part of a broader fitness checking that we are, and our Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen has been very clear about that in her hearing already when, presenting herself for the job, that she is very committed to doing that.
Thank you, Renata. Much that it's very welcome. As we know, simplification is not simple, and it's clear that you, as we will, all have our work cut out. We're up on time, so unfortunately no time for questions from the floor. But just to conclude, I think it's great to hear such clarity of purpose on all sides, though evidently there is a long road ahead to a true telecom single market. However, to borrow words from the Minister earlier, may all of us musicians in our great European orchestra make a new masterpiece of legislation together. With that in mind, I think all that remains is to thank our panelists in the customary way.